Hi everyone, welcome to our latest video where we're going to be doing a direct side-by-side comparison of the new True L20.2 pads and the new CCM Axis 2 pads. I've been wanting to do this video ever since CCM and Lefebvre went their separate ways and Lefebvre started working with True. So 2022 has finally allowed us the opportunity to do that with both of their newest lines. I'm going to be pointing out some of the similarities between the two pads, but also a lot of the differences between the two as well. So, biggest difference, first and foremost, True pads, made in Canada at the NHL factory by Lefebvre. CCMs, made overseas, still made in the NHL factory, the factory where all of the NHL goalies get their CCM equipment, but that's the biggest difference. A lot of people would say and believe that Canadian made equipment is made to a better quality, like better construction, better materials. I've never had any problems with how CCM make their equipment, any sort of durability issues, any material issues. That's just me. There's stories about every manufacturer and issues, good and bad, no matter where they're made. So to me, that makes no difference whatsoever, but it's a difference nonetheless. So the Trues have a much stiffer core to them. They are, from top to bottom, well, from the top of the boot upwards, generally a stiffer pad. In terms of how they flex, they're the stiffest pad I've ever used. As I mentioned when I reviewed these previously, I've never used a pad as stiff as these. CCM, still a very, very stiff pad, but does have a little bit more flex in the thigh rise, which, again, I'm not for or against having a stiff pad overall or a bit of flex there. For me personally, the CCM does have a bit better butterfly coverage because it has a bit of more of a natural flex and a natural shape to the top of the pad. The biggest difference between the two pads is the innovation on the knee side. So, I've reviewed both of these pads in detail, but the biggest difference will be the DRS Pro system on the Axis pads, a dynamic rotation system, which is a built-in, all-in-one sort of inside edge of the pad, which naturally makes the pad a lot stiffer, but offers a lot more stability through the knee. If we see on the True pad, doesn't have that, has more of your traditional Lefebvre style knee shape there, which isn't quite as stable. It offers a bit more movement through the knee area there. So still quite stable on the ice, but not quite as much as the CCM. The seal on the ice and the responsiveness of the CCM is better on the ice, in my opinion. So putting these back around. As I mentioned before, the True has got less curve to it. There's still a bit of shape there, but you'll see with the CCM there is more natural curve to that shape there. Both thin profile, I don't think there's any difference whatsoever in terms of the thickness of the thigh rise there and the profile of the pads. There's a bit more curve with the CCM, which, as I mentioned before, will offer you slightly better seal and sort of better sort of butterfly coverage on the 5-hole there. So as we move down the pads, the Trues have got a much softer boot. So there's a lot more sort of vertical flexion in the boot there that you can see, as opposed to the CCM, which doesn't move much at all, despite putting quite a bit of weight on that. So that means a few things. Biggest thing I've noticed is it means that the True actually sits almost an inch shorter. In exactly the same measurement pads, the True will sit a bit shorter because the boot is softer. It sits deeper on the foot. Both pads have got very, very flat insides to the boot, so they sit on top of the skates to allow you a better angle of attack. But yeah, the softness of the boot is definitely affects the overall pad height. So I think if I was going to order these again, keeping that in mind, I'd probably order an extra inch or so on the thigh rise, just to bring it up to the same size as the CCMs. So that's the sort of main difference in height. The most drastic difference between the two pads, and I'm very surprised at this, is the difference in weight. I mentioned that the Trues were the lightest pad that I've ever used, but they're almost 400 grams lighter than the CCMs. The CCMs are actually heavier than the CCM Axis ones, so the original Axis pads, which I'm massively surprised about. Don't really notice it so much on the ice, but definitely when you're holding the pads, you do notice the weight difference. So the Trues are remarkably light, but again, I don't really consider that a negative for the CCM because the weight distribution and the stiffness and how it's built compensates for that brilliantly. So that's my sort of comparison of the two pads. I'll be doing another second video where we're going to be comparing the differences between the two sets of gloves.